Our number one priority is that we advocate for fine arts education for all students.
A true leader is a person that comes in, builds systems and processes and procedures, leaves the place better than when they found it, and most importantly, when they leave, the level of success continues or even gets better.
You surround yourself with people that are better than you, and you surround yourself with people that know more than you in the areas that you are lacking. Today, my job is to give you an overview of exactly what we're going to be talking about within the morning session. And so we will be discussing our organization, and I'll introduce our board members once again, just so that you know, a great team that we have. We also are going to define the road to fine arts administration. How do we get to fine arts? How do we become an administrator in fine arts? What's that road look like? Our next component to this is going to be the portrait of a fine arts administrator. What does it look like? What are we supposed to have? What kind of degrees do we need to have? What pathway did you take? We'll also explore the wonderful baptism by fire question. I'm in charge of what and why, and how am I going to do all of it? So how am I going to wear all the hats that we're having to deal with as we are administrators of our districts? We'll go over some leadership tenets for success. We'll dive into the architect versus firefighter, the difference between both. And we'll also build yourself a network for TFAA Aspiring Academy. We are definitely on the road of developing a cohort for young administrators who are interested in becoming fine arts directors in any capacity, specialists, coordinators, so on and so forth, and developing some cohorts where they can actually team up and build a network of teams. And then lastly, we'll have some questions for you all. So without further ado, here's our board once again. The team: Kim Blank, Vice President; Jeff Bradford, our Secretary; Jim Drew, Past President; and Peter West, our Executive Secretary. And so we're going to dive into our next category, and that's going to be Kim Blank.
So this is just to tell you a little bit about our organization. Again, we're TFAA, the Texas Fine Arts Administrator Association. You may have heard of us before. We used to be called TMAC, or Texas Music Administrators Conference. And through the work of our board over a couple of years, some pretty heavy lifting from our past president, Mr. Jim Drew, and Ms. Dinah Minger, who is off of our board now, the board successfully brought to the membership and changed our name to Texas Fine Arts Administrator Association for a few reasons. One, we do more than just a conference now. We have a year of programming and support for our administrators. And two, we realized that our jobs have changed vastly since this organization began 53 years ago. So our organization is 53 years old. You'll see that. We have 153 school districts that are members of our organization. And that means that we provide support to administrators who oversee over 3,000 schools, which is just a real joy and excitement. Our number one priority is that we support administrators to ensure that we advocate for fine arts education for all students. And our board has made a special attempt and drive to say, yes, we support music programs. We also support all the other things that fall under the umbrella of an arts administrator. Because if you don't know, you may get this job if you don't already have it, or some of you are sitting out there and you have it, and you're like, yeah, tell them that I'm in charge of, cheerleading. And tell them that I'm in charge of ROTC, and whatever else doesn't fall under someone else's category falls under you usually in your district. So that's a big reason for our name change and the support that we put forward. The big thing is that in order to have strong fine arts and programs, your teachers, your educators, they need someone leading the way. And our organization attempts to not only support people who are already in these positions, but it is a big goal of ours to create more positions like this, not only in Texas, but in other states. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Last year, we were fortunate enough to be selected to present at our prestigious TMEA conference, and we were very excited about that. And we just presented to everybody about how to become a fine arts administrator, which we're going to talk about next on the road to administration. And I want to tell you, it was really exciting because after that presentation, education, a young man who was a band director came up to talk to me, and he was from Alaska. He said, we don't have anything like this, and we need this. And we said, well, then you should become this. And he said, well, I would love to. So we corresponded for over a year, and I was just telling the guys recently that 2 weeks ago he emailed me and said, Kim, I'm going to be the first fine arts administrator in our district, and I start in January. So that's really exciting for us. So if you're sitting out there right now saying, we don't have anything like this, just add a yet to the end of that sentence, because it might be you next, or you might be at least advocating for someone to take a position like this. So there are numerous ways to get to a fine arts administrator position, and I thought it would be nice if our board members told you what they were doing right before they got their position and what education they have.
So I taught 16 and a half years, band director, recovered. I'm doing well, thank you very much. Enjoyed all of it. I did get a master's degree in administration from the University of Grand Canyon online, and it was amazing. It was an amazing experience. I got the degree because I wanted to just further my education, not realizing that I would be down this avenue of fine arts administration. So that's a little bit about me.
So I was band director for 23 years, 15 years as a middle school band director, and then the last 6 years at the high school level as assistant band director. And I have a master's degree in conducting, actually, instrumental conducting. And then I went back and got a second master's degree in professional counseling, because I thought I was going to become a therapist, but that didn't work out. So, yes, it is sort of working out. Yeah.
So hi everyone. I taught middle school, junior high, and then high school band for a total of 24 years before putting on the Darth Vader costume and moving into administration, which I did for 20 years, 44 total when I retired. I have two degrees. One is a Bachelor of Music from Southern Methodist University, just throwing aside, go ponies, okay? And then I have a master's degree in also in instrumental conducting from the University of Houston.
And I'm probably the biggest outlier on this. I barely got my undergrad degree, and I taught out in rural East Texas at a very, very small school where it was like grades 6 through 12, so I was the music man, if you will. And then another rural area, and then I came to a more metropolitan area. So I taught 15 years of beginners through 12th graders. And then I did not know that this was something that I was interested in until it became available mid-year. I only have a bachelor's degree, and I never pursued a master's because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I didn't know that was going to be an option. Now that I've moved into this job, it's one of those things that's really opened up my eyes. And if I could encourage anybody out there, if you've not done a master's, I think I would really encourage you to do that, because there's so many things I'm still trying to learn that I feel like that I missed out on because other people have different experiences than I do.
So I'm a little bit of an outlier too. I do not have a music degree, sadly. I wish. I play the piano, so they let me hang out with them. But I have a theater degree. I have a BFA in acting and directing. And then I have an MA in educational leadership with a specialty in organizational change. So when I became a fine arts director, I actually did not have my master's degree at that time either. I had just enrolled in a master's program, and the district asked me to step in as interim when our fine arts director went on to work at UIL in Texas, and we're really proud of him. And then I had the opportunity to stay on as the full-time director, and ended up completing my master's during that process. So I tell you that just to say, there are people up here with music degree backgrounds in their masters. There's people up here who did not get a master's degree, people who got it during it, people who have counseling degrees, people who have educational administration degrees. You'll also see other administrators who get out of the classroom and they go to be a vice principal, or they go to be a principal of a campus and then move into this role. So I would just encourage you to know that the roads all look different. And wherever you are now, there's a path for you to fine arts administration if that's your desire.
So what does the fine arts administrator do, actually? And it's different in every school district. And what's kind of neat is if you become the first fine arts administrator in your district, you'll probably create the role. As Kim mentioned, we have 153 different districts in our organization, and I bet no two of them have the same kind of job description. We all do very similar things, but it could look very different depending on your district and how your district is structured. So here are the major hats or roles that you'll play as a fine arts administrator. You're going to be a professional leader. You're going to be leading a team of teachers as well as possibly central office folks. This is a big one, advocate and influencer. You are the person that's going to push for the arts in your district through various ways. Compliance manager. That's probably the least fun part of our job, but we all have to make sure that the rules get followed and people are compliant with certifications and training and that sort of thing. Program developer. You are the curriculum person for the arts in your district or for your subject. And then finally, architect. And that's could be an architect of the fine arts programs in your district, but literally also you could be involved in planning buildings and things like that. So let's take a little bit deeper dive into each of these roles and what do the tasks actually look like. And there's a lot of information on this slide, and we're going to actually go into each one of these columns in quite a bit more detail, but I'll just kind of give you an overview. It can be a little overwhelming. It's like, I'm in charge of what? I mean, all of these different things. I remember when I first became a fine arts administrator, I went to a meeting and I was in the curriculum area and they were throwing around acronyms. I had no idea what they were talking about. After the meeting, I had to call somebody who's like, what does this mean? What does that mean? So the first one is a compliance manager. The big area of compliance is money. So you'll have a budget or you'll control the funds for finance programs in your district. Policies, procedures, compliance, that's a big one. Knowing board policy, what you can and cannot do. And then booster clubs is another one. In Texas, booster clubs are governed also by board policy, and so we often spend a lot of time dealing with boosters. Program developer. You are the instructional leader for the arts. That means you're planning professional development, you're writing curriculum, you're training teachers in pedagogical systems that the district would like for you to use. Another big focus is retention. Like, how do we get kids in our programs and keep them in our programs? That's a big one. And then an advocate and an influencer. In some ways, this is the most important role. And for people like me, I'm a little bit of an introvert, so I'm not always comfortable getting up and speaking in front of large crowds and asking for things that I want. But I've forced myself to do it because it's so important. And the ways that you do that is you're the community liaison. You'll be the project manager for large-scale fine arts programs in your district. You're an event planner. You also deal with parent concerns, and you're constantly advocating, all the way from the boardroom to parents and community members. That's so important. And then an architect, we mentioned this, building and planning schools, new buildings, renovations, bond projects, things like that, or advocating for bond projects. That's a really important role. Facilities maintenance and improvement, inventory of musical instruments, those kinds of things. And then really important is strategic planning, which is just basically a fancy way of you plan the work and then you work the plan. And that is so very important for success as a fine arts administrator. And then you're gonna be a professional leader, meaning you're gonna manage an office. And your office like when I started, it was me and a secretary. So she kind of managed me, because I was new, didn't know what I was doing. But so you may have an office, but then there are also other people in the central office that you're going to have to interact with and have great relationships with if you want to get things done. And then finally, cross-departmental collaboration. The more that you can be of value to the people in your school district, the more they will come to you for things. Serving on committees, being on task forces, doing things maybe that are only remotely related to fine arts, but make you of value to the people in your building is going to be so important. Okay. So let's look at the first area, compliance manager.
So, hey guys, it's great to see so many of you here today. And of course, as the executive secretary of the group, it falls to me to have this to tell other people what to do and how to do it and when to do it or not to do it, right? So the first thing that Jim mentioned, the policy and procedures. compliance. When I first became a fine arts administrator, I was really surprised and caught off guard by the number of people who did not understand how some board policies work and whether or not they applied to their different fine arts organizations in their school. How did University Interscholastic Leagues, which is an organization in Texas that covers all interscholastic competitions and events, that yes, this thing is a UIL thing, so yes, these rules do apply and you need to know what they are. Or there's a UIL rule that covers all extracurriculars, and yes, even though this event isn't UIL, they still have to follow the rules. I was really caught off guard by that and had plenty of conversations with the principal saying, no, this is what the rule says and they have to follow it. So as the fine arts administrator, you have to know what those rules are and be prepared to dig your heels in at times and say, no, this is what the rule says here. Let me open the book and I'll show you and know where to go and find this information. You also will be in charge of the departmental procedures, things, Jim already mentioned the inventory. One of the things that was my job at the end of every year was to go and do a district-wide inventory of all of our band instruments for however many schools it was at the time. When I left, we had 6 high schools and 9 middle schools, so it took a couple days to do that. But we had to do it. All our instruments were shared across the district, so we needed to know what we had and what condition they were in and where they were. And so when it came time to prepare for a bond issue, a bond package, I could walk in and say, we have 25 oboes in our school district, but in 2 years we're going to have 50 oboe players. So we need to buy some more oboes in this next bond package, or we need to put the money into it out of my capital outlay to do that. In addition to inventory, instrument inventory, it could be uniforms. One of the things that I was in charge of was coordinating with the uniform manufacturers to put together how much the uniforms were going to cost, so we can take that to our board and get them to approve it. Also, whatever our district-wide expectations were, and there were a lot in Leander that are actually very good and are grounded in what's best for students. And so I try to take those ideas and concepts and apply them to fine arts. Became one of my priorities as the first fine arts director that had ever been in Leander to kind of talk to what Jim said. And what he said about, what he didn't mention was the same thing happened to Gary Markham, who's a dear friend of mine, happened to me, which is, there's your office and here are the keys. We're not really sure what you're gonna do. It was like, it's okay. I know some really good fine arts directors, so I have a good plan about how this is gonna work. Jim mentioned Booster Club compliance. And again, in Texas, there's a whole list of Booster Club expectations. And it was my job to make sure, with the help of our athletic director and some of our other administrative cohort, to explain to the Booster Club officers exactly this is what you can do, this is what you cannot do, especially in terms of fundraising, which is a huge part of what our Booster Clubs do in Texas. No raffles, for instance, was a huge one that we had to talk about at least every year. And also what our expectation was of the fine arts staff, the teachers and the students that were not within the purview of the Booster Club officers. This is what our directors do. Your job is to support them and to support the programs. It's not to tell them whether or not they can have a rehearsal on this Saturday. So, and believe it or not, that it can be a part of things from time to time. Also, making sure that the Booster Club, if they're a 501c3, that they adhere to all the tax laws that they are bound to do. And if they're not, like what other parameters that they can operate within. And then finally, budget and resource management. Not just the inventory, not just the instruments, not just all the other things that choir programs, orchestra programs, our theater and dance programs have to have, but also how do we get these things purchased? What are the methods for doing that? And what are our avenues for being able to purchase equipment? How can we spend this money? What funds are available to us that we can use? And sometimes convincing other administrators that, yes, this is a fund that we can use. We really can use ESSER funds for our fine arts. So this is just a little bit of what we do. And one of the other things about this job is I can't tell you the number of times when I would come home and realize that my day didn't work out exactly the way that I planned, but it was okay. Because a lot of times as a band director, that happened that way too. So we're going to go on to the next topic, which is program developer.
We made Peter do compliance, and I get to do the one we all love, which is program developer. And I will say this is probably one of the things you will love most about this job. Right now, you're all program developers. Most of you are all working in some sort of capacity to grow and develop programs, arts programs for kids. And you continue to do that into this job. You just do it on a much larger level. You do it on a much larger level because now you're doing it for multiple art strands or other programs that your district may have. And then in addition to multiple art strands and other programs, you're also developing programs for the community. And I think we forget that sometimes. You're a community face. When you show up to events, not only in the school district, but almost every single one of us serve on boards that are not boards directly linked to our school district. They are arts boards in our community and surrounding areas. And when you walk in, you want people to say, oh yes, this is Kim. She started this in our community. She's done this at our schools. You are someone who is continually developing opportunities for students in the arts and for your teachers. So a few things about that. Instructional leader is right at the top. You're working for a school district, so instruction is important. It's also important that people in your own school district view you as an instructional leader, not the fun person, not the person who comes in and does all the things kids just, oh, they have so much fun in your classroom. Yes, and we're a necessity, and we take it seriously. We take instruction seriously, we take curriculum seriously, because we know that when we put our time and attention into content knowledge and the management of our classroom, that we can become the sorts of instructors that people at our central admin building say, oh, we're gonna walk some people from this district around, let's make sure we get in some fine arts classrooms. I loved it when our assistant superintendent of curriculum instruction came to me and said, you know, we're really trying to talk to our teachers about engaged learning, and we did these learning walks today, and every fine arts class I went into, they were engaged, it was student-led. And of course you're sitting there like, right, that's what we do. You're surprised at how much that's not happening in other places. So when you can come in and be someone who is seen as an important voice in instruction, that's always positive. And also remember that the arts affect instruction that is non-arts related instruction. And so anytime you can be a force in that area, it's important as well. I want to tell you, this says instructional leader for a reason, not instructional expert. Many people think you have to be a content expert in every area. I am not a content expert in art. Am I someone that my art teachers want to come to when they don't know what to do? Absolutely. I'm not a content expert in instrumental music. If you ask my band directors if they have a problem, am I going to be one of their first phone calls? They're going to say yes. So what I would encourage you to know is it's okay when you get into this job and you aren't a content expert in one or multiple art strands. That's why you have friends who are fine arts directors. I mean, every single one of these guys has received a call from me saying, wait, what? What do y'all do? And they have called me and said, right, but like in rehearsal, they're like sitting around at a table just talking, Kim. And I'm able to say, okay, this is why, this is what they're doing, and we're able to talk a little bit about it. So don't feel like you have to automatically be the expert. I would really stress curriculum development, and this goes back to what I said before. Even in fairly large, successful school districts in Texas, sometimes curriculum gets put on the back burner in the arts. And I think that's a mistake. I think it's a mistake because when you've got babies, and I don't mean kids, I mean when you've got baby teachers coming in, they need help in this area. And if you have a fully developed curriculum that they can walk in the door, and some of them are still learning to live on their own and do their own laundry and grocery shop and clean their apartment, and then they're putting in 80 hours a week out teaching in the band world. They don't have time to think about all of that. But if you're able to be there and say, you know what, hey, we gotcha, look at what we do, and it is something that just happens, then you stand to have far less ups and downs, like, wow, this program was amazing, and then it went down. Why? It is the instructional leader there, but it's also the things you supply that instructional leader, the tools you give them. And you're the one that can drive forward the development of curriculum in your district in this position. In addition to that, recruitment and retention manager. So now when you attend workshops now, and someone talks about recruitment, they're usually here to tell you how to get more kiddos to get in your program. I want to challenge you with this. As a director of fine arts, recruitment and retention for the student is very important. You teaching teachers to track it, to pay attention to it, to know when they're doing well, when they should have some caution, what's happening over here, why is it that this program is doing this and over here this program is not there? That's important. I also want to say, as a fine arts director, recruitment and retention manager is your job to recruit and retain teachers. That's going to be more important now than ever in our career, because I think y'all know, like, teaching's hard, and it's getting harder sometimes in our communities. And so you are there to make teachers want to teach for you. You want to be the kind of leader that people say, wherever she goes, I'm going. Because, man, I love teaching for her. She understands, she's there, she supports us, she backs us up, and she gets us what we need. So you want to retain those teachers when you get them, and then you want to be in places where your teachers that have taught for you say, if you ever get an opportunity to work for Kim, you should work in that school district. She's going to support you. You want to develop the kind of reputation that recruits and retains your own educators. And finally, what I would just say about program development is, as a fine arts director, it's my goal in a school district that I work in that has multiple high schools, multiple middle schools, to have the kind of district that I can say, oh, you are just moving here to Keller? Okay, and your kid's in orchestra, that's awesome. It doesn't matter where you buy a house. It doesn't matter. If you buy a house in Keller ISD, you're awesome, you're great, you're gonna have a fantastic experience. Because I'm helping to develop those programs, and I'm going to make sure that a program that is right here on this campus, I'm going to make sure that 9 miles away, your kid can have the same experience on this campus. You shouldn't have to pay attention to what zip code you buy in my school district to ensure your kid gets a great experience. If you have to do that in your district, you've got work to do as a fine arts director. And so that's what you're doing, is you're developing programs at a level where people can live anywhere in your district and have an amazing fine arts experience.
So I'm going to talk about the next two slides, which is starting with the advocate and the influencer. And one of the things I'm going to start with is 3 words that's been really powerful, especially listening to my colleagues talk and other folks. But the first one is communicate. You have to communicate what expectations are. You have to communicate what's going on in your district. And part of that is educating them as well, making sure that parents and community members, that your administration understand what's going on. And then the last one is that advocate piece. And the reason I put it in that order is I think a lot of times we're so passionate about what's going on that we start with advocacy. We try to explain to people so passionately about why this is right and why what they're doing is wrong a lot of times. And I hear that so many times. I'm fortunate that our current superintendent in my school district, she hired me in this job, and she was in a different job for quite a while. And along the road, she would pull me to the side and she'd say, Jeff, you're the most passionate person I know. You are willing to fight tooth and nail for the fine arts, but where's your data? Where's the information that we can understand instead of going off of emotion? And I realized a lot of times, coming out of the classroom, I was very emotionally based. I was very much, well, we have to have this, and this is why, and if we don't, it's all going to blow up. Well, that wasn't necessarily true. I was really passionate about what I was talking about or whatever I was asking for. But what she helped sort of reshape my mind about is, Jeff, we've got this community that we've been really fortunate that we have developed that fine arts is really important. And it's because we've had those relationships that we've built. It's because we've had a long tradition of excellence in what's going on. But if you want to continue to move that forward in this day and age, with everything that's pulling in public education, what you need to do is come with data, come with facts, and don't come and beat me over the head with the advocacy side first. You will get to the advocacy side if you will start with just communicate, have a conversation. Not every conversation has to be at a level 10 as you're coming in, even if they told you, hey, we're removing a position or we're going to have to pull back on your budget. They came to me last year and they said, we're looking at roughly 10%. We're going to have to find ways to show them. And for us, that was about $35,000. Well, one of the things that we had to really think about was, how am I going to respond to that? So the first thing I did is I said, okay, let's talk through this. Let's communicate through this. And then we moved into the educating side of, well, why do you need all these box trucks? Well, because we don't have, big rigs for our groups, so we need the box trucks. However, if we were able to ever think about moving that into a bond planning, then we would be able to alleviate some of that stress on a consistent issue in our operating side. And then as I did that, I was able to advocate for the programs about exactly what they needed. So the reason I start with those three things is because I approached that as something that my superintendent has really ingrained in me and supported me with. That's something I approach in our community. And when we start about talking about the community liaison side of that, Kim has talked about this and getting involved, but it's putting high quality events out there and showcasing things in a way that people buy into what's going on. I'm very fortunate in my school district that we've created an appetite for about 60 years. And it's one of those things, if y'all have ever been to a really nice steak restaurant and you've gone there and then you've been to Outback, you don't ever go back to Outback because you've eaten at Three Forks or you've eaten at Gina Giorgetti's down the street. Like, you don't go back to Outback because you know what you want and you know what's really good. If you can create that in your community by putting your high quality programs out there and encouraging the community to get engaged and to be the one that sets up those events, and you'll notice a lot of the different things that we talk about on there, but providing an opportunity for them to come into the school, but for you to be able to push into the community as well. The community is the one that makes everything go around. I don't think I understood that. I thought it was the Booster Club forever. As a band director, I was like, oh, the boosters are my principal. That's my people. No, it's not. It's the voters. The voters are the one that make everything go around. And so if they decide to pull back on a bond or if they decide to pull back on something, well, hold on a minute, let's talk about this. If you choose to do that, then I can't do that holiday performance that you really like with the mayor. I also can't do some of those other events that we've been doing for 20 plus years. I can't march in the parade if I don't have the uniforms that I need and I don't have the instruments that I need at the level that we need it at. If you can grow that community appetite, that's where you will start to see real change. And where they buy into that is what they see and hear by coming to your high school musicals, by coming to your other events that you push into as well. The other thing that we talk about on here is the fine arts advocacy of that. One of the things that you have to be is you have to be knowledgeable and aware of what's going on. I didn't always read those emails when they would come in, and Mr. Floyd is our past executive director of TBA. Mr. Floyd, I'm coming clean with you right now. I didn't read all your emails for about 15 years. And then let me tell you, when I started reading them is when I moved into this job, and I was like, oh crap, I gotta understand that. Or I didn't understand the law. Because I didn't pay attention as a band director. I had to get the marching band really clean, so I got one. That's where my focus was. And then all of a sudden, I'm in charge of all of these kids. I'm in charge of all of these teachers. And it was really overwhelming. So I started digging into the emails. And one of the things that I'm really thankful for is that we have a group in Texas, like many of you do across the United States, that has a foundation of support for teaching about that stuff. What does music education say in the law? Mr. Floyd, I was able to use that twice in the last 2 weeks when someone says, well, we're just not going to do elementary music for the rest of the year because we need to do all of this other stuff going on. Our kids are not scoring well enough on these tests. Well, hold on a minute. I was able to pull that up thanks to you and Joe and all the work that you guys have done over the past years to enable us to be aware of that. But part of that is making sure that we are aware of where those resources are and then how to properly use them. And it's picking up the phone and calling your colleagues, as you'll hear throughout the presentation today. It's doing the same thing that we all do as band and orchestra directors. It's building that community that helps you with that. As we think about strategic planning in there, and as we think about the architectural side of this, I think one of the things that's so important is if you are putting a bond process together, obviously you're trying to look at those opportunities to build upon what you have and how to move forward from there. What do your kids need? How do you get that data in? What does the data look like? And I keep talking about data because I think it drives so much of what we do in administration, and it's also what your superintendents understand. Right now, most of us are probably in school districts dealing with potential for budget cuts, potential for all sorts of different things going on. In our state of Texas, there's a lot of things out there with the voucher system right now that's pulling at us, and everybody's scared. One of the things that our superintendent talks to us about is don't be scared, find the data, make sure it's accurate, and make sure you understand it so you can explain it. So that when you need to go to bat for certain things, whether it's, we've run out of space at a middle school. We need this performing facility for our groups to continue getting better. One of the great things I had an opportunity to do is we do 5-year bond plannings in Richardson ISD. And I've gotten to be a part of those for the past few years. And one of the things that was really valuable is I kept saying, I need $5 million over 5 years to pay for these instruments. And they kept shaking their head at me. I was like, what else do I have to tell them? Like, you're not gonna have these programs if you don't. Bring me, show me, bring me the data. So the next time I got in front of them, I brought the 1976 bass clarinet from Pierce High School in our district that had still been there. And we kept putting all this money into it. We were able to track the amount of repairs. We could have bought like 10 bass clarinets that we had spent on that thing instead of doing this. So I laid the bass clarinet down at the committee, I explained it, and I showed them the data. I got $6 million because they understood. And I say that not because I did anything. I listened to those administrators that were like, Jeff, you're going about it all wrong. You need to think in the data that we understand and how to connect with us in a way. And the final thing about that is we talk about what that strategic planning looks like. It's making sure that you're always checking in with those teachers. Your teachers know what they need. They have needs and wants, and you put them in the 2 columns, but it's finding out what you need and why, and show me what you're gonna do with it, and inviting people in to be able to see that. Because when your community understands, and when you have educated at the accurate level with your administration, it makes it real easy for people to understand that when you slide the data in there as well. Because you've proven to them that you've done the homework, and that now they see and understand exactly what that looks like. So we're gonna transition into the next one today, which is our professional leader.
So professional leader really comes down to one thing, in my humble opinion, and that's really developing and fostering relationships with everyone at central office and everyone that's going to deal in your world. Your chief officer, right, of finances. That relationship is a definite must of trying to figure out what they like for Christmas. What would you like to have for Christmas as a gift? The head custodians, have a great relationship with custodians, making sure that you're very, very, very well familiar with who they are and what they're wanting. Providing opportunities to have those conversations with them, stopping in the hallway and saying good morning, good afternoon. It doesn't matter what campus, you're gonna run into these people all the time. The other component is chief of HR. Boy, do we need chief of HR being really super happy with us. Because they're the individuals that we're going to really ask for our staffing solutions to be what we all dream them to be. We want 60 band directors, we want 10 art teachers on campuses, we want to do what's best for kids. But that relationship is really going to be established by you being a part of that conversation and visiting their office. Have that open door policy of just walking in and saying, good morning, how are you? So if we go through the central office administrator, your job in essence is to really make yourself visible and be a part of everything that they ask you to be. So if there's an interview process that they're asking you to do for a chief of whatever, you want to participate in it. You're in the room. You're going to find out what they're looking for and what conversations they're having. So a really good way of knowing what the district is actually going to have happen in a year. When you're in the room, it's so amazing how much information you find out. And then you walk out of the office going like strategically, got it, noted, I understand what I need to look for. Here we go, we're gonna move forward. The other component to this is the office manager as far as your space. Making sure that your team is viable and important to you, and you let them do the work. You have to allow them to fail to learn, right? I had a great superintendent that I worked for who was my principal at one time, and then became the superintendent in Mission, now is at Garland ISD in Texas. And Rick gave me the best advice ever as far as just managing the team and office, just the office perspective. You surround yourself with people that are better than you, and you surround yourself with people that know more than you in the areas that you are lacking. And allow them to do the work, and allow them and stretch them. Give them the opportunity to learn those experiences, because that's how they're going to grow. And that only in itself builds the team to be what you want it to be. And understanding that your job, it's my job as a mentor or mentee, which we'll get into here in a bit, is to really create future fine arts directors and administrators. Our job, my job specifically, and I hold this true, is that I want my assistant director coordinators to move up. I want them to become who I know that they can become. So the management piece is super important. The cross-departmental collaborator, and we talked a little bit about that just recently. It's about being involved in every opportunity that they give you. For instance, I was contacted at the beginning of the year. We have a wonderful technology department, amazing. But they're swamped with the one-to-one process right now. They just don't have time to even take lunches. Great department. I'm very good friends with department director. So Tylene called and said, hey, I really need a sound system. I cannot get to it. Is there any way that you can do this? And so I said, Tylene, yes, we'll make it happen. We'll make it work. What do you need? He goes, well, I need a full sound system for X, Y, and Z at 3 campuses. I said, Tylene, how do you know I have equipment? And she goes, Manny, I know everything. Strangely enough, we equipped our fine arts office with enough equipment to do it on our own. Because I hate to ask, right? I've always been that person, like I just don't want to bother anyone, so I want to make sure we have what we need. So we set up 3 sound systems. Lo and behold, school board members found out. And they approached us and said, hey, we heard that you did this, this, and this. Is there any way that you can do it for our board meeting on a campus? And so my question is, does Tylene know? Right? I don't want to overstep. So it's communicating with Tylene. So I reached out to Tylene and said, I just got a board member to communicate with me and saying, we really need you to get this set up. I said, absolutely, Tylene, let's go do it. We now have a partnership. When Tylene can't do it and her department can't make it happen, she'll call our office and we'll make it happen. If there's something that I need from Tylene, guess what? I can call her at any point in time and she'll start. It's really developing the relationships across this district to really be a part of your system as fine arts. So create those relationships, it's super important.
So one of the things that the organization TFAA does is develop leadership capacity in our members. And this is something I'm really excited about and love presenting on. So I've set up a couple of 8 actually dichotomies, or 10 dichotomies up here to just kind of set the stage for some conversations around what does leadership look like? So as an administrator, leadership, of course, is a huge part of that. So the first one I put up there is leading versus managing. Okay, so if you think of a manager, that's the bureaucrat, the worker bee, the person that moves pieces of paper around on the desk, right? To be a leader, though, you have to prioritize building relationships. And if you prioritize building the relationships, the paperwork gets done. But always, the relationship building is the first priority. The next one I have is influencing versus controlling. A lot of people, and I'm one of them, when I was a teacher, I thought, well, when I become a fine arts administrator, then I can tell people what to do and order them around, and things will be a lot better when people do things my way. And then you get into the role and you realize that you have very, very little control. You have some influence, but you have very little control. So fine arts administrator positions are what we call mid-management, right? They're instructional coaches and coordinators maybe below you, but there's a whole lot of layers above you that call the shots. The C-level folks, your assistant superintendent, the deputy superintendent, the superintendent of the school board. And so you're stuck in this middle management area. So it's really about, there's a book written called Leadership 360, I don't know if you've ever read that, and it talks about how to not only lead the people that report to you, but also lead your colleagues and lead the people above you to get things done. And so you really have to become an influencer to change behavior. Equipping versus directing. So it's not about delegating as much as it is equipping people to do the work that you need them to do. I'll give you a small example in my district. So this year we're going to institute Senior Achievement Awards, where we're going to recognize seniors who are going to major in music in college, as well as students who have gained the most scholarship money in their respective discipline at their campus. So it's a lot of work to put that together. And one of my staff members, I said, hey, would you take this on and coordinate it? Be the project manager for this awards night. And this person took it on, and we empowered them to do it, and they're doing the work, and they're making decisions, and then they bring decision points back to us in our weekly meetings, and it has worked so much better. And that feels different than, hey, I'm going to volunteer you to coordinate this meeting, and here's all the things I want you to do. So it's really about empowering people. Inspiring versus gaining compliance. Again, forcing people to do things that they don't want to do leaves resentment in the wake, right? So it's really about, how do I get this person to do what I'd like them to do and make them think it's their idea? So it's like sort of like this adult behavior kind of thing. And that's probably one of the most challenging parts of the job, but that's really where you have to be highly emotionally intelligent and know how to work with people to get them to do what you'd like them to do and make them think it's their idea. Okay, leaving a legacy versus being heroic. So I don't know if any of you have ever read the books by Jim Collins, Good to Great and Built to Last. Have you ever read those books? So Collins talks about the cult of personality. Somebody that comes in and just because of the sheer force of their personality, like holds things together and gets things done, and then as soon as they leave, everything falls apart. That is not a true leader. A true leader is a person that comes in, builds systems and processes and procedures, leaves the place better than when they found it, and most importantly, when they leave, the level of success continues or even gets better after they leave. That's the mark of a true leader, and I think that's what we aspire to be. Saying yes versus saying no. That's another one. When I took over in my position, I made a commitment. I said, I want to figure out how I can say yes. And it may even be yes, but not yet. Or it might, but I try to find a way to say yes when a teacher asks a question or makes a request. Because first of all, to make a request, you have to get up your nerve. And a lot of people aren't comfortable doing that. So if you shoot them down right away, of course, they're going to be less likely to ask in the future, right? So try to find a way to build, to facilitate rather than building barriers. Being proactive versus reactive. So this comes from Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. The first habit is be proactive, right? So creating systems and putting things in place ahead of time rather than reacting to it. I'll give you another example. A district near mine put a musical on, and it was very controversial in the community. And so I thought, okay, with the state of things in our district and the school board and so forth, I'm not going to risk having that happen. I'm going to be proactive. So we created community standards and an approval process ahead of time so that we wouldn't go through the same situation. So just always thinking ahead, like how can I mitigate the problem before it is a problem? Being accessible versus inaccessible. So this training I went to called Breakthrough Coach, I don't know if any of you have ever attended that. It's empowering, and the basic premise is this. As an administrator, your job is to talk, not to do menial tasks. So you have staff to do the menial tasks, your job is to talk. Now again, we're in mid-management, right? So we're kind of in between. We also sometimes have to do menial tasks, but really, if you think about it, if my job is to talk, then I've got to be accessible to talk to people, right? I can't hide in my office with the door shut writing memos, right? So just keeping that in mind. And then creating healthy boundaries versus being everybody's buddy. My wife likes to say we teach people how to treat us by creating healthy boundaries, right? And it's lonely at the top. And I can tell you that all my band director buddies when I was a teacher, all evaporated about a year after I took this job, because, I told them that they had to do things that they didn't want to hear, and, they have to come to a PLC meeting on time, and, all of a sudden it's like, well, you've just turned into this, autocrat. No, it's lonely at the top. So, but you have to create healthy boundaries. And then finally, building bridges and not walls. And again, somebody mentioned this earlier, Manny, I think it's about building relationships. We're in the relationship business. That's job number one, is to build positive relationships with all the people that we work with.
So I would say, and we're kind of wrapping some of this up for y'all. The title of our workshop, Architecting Exceptional Music Programs, and the job of a fine arts administrator. We've had this conversation before, and if you're a sitting arts administrator, you understand this. Architect versus firefighter, which one are you going to be? And I always say you have to be both in this job. You have to fight fires. If you don't solve problems for people, they don't need you. You're there to solve problems so that it doesn't get to the next person. I had a great boss who one time used to say to me, if it gets to me, it's free. That's what he would say to us. And so I would say that to my teachers too. If it gets to me, it's free. I'm giving it away. I'm making them happy. So you solve the problems. You get in there and you be the hero. Don't let me be the hero in a problem you could have solved. And what I would say to you about this is you have to be a firefighter. However, if you allow the firefighting to be all you do, your programs suffer, your educators suffer, and they're sitting out there on the campuses wondering where you are and what you're doing. They don't understand the fires that you're fighting, and they shouldn't have to, right? They don't need to know the things you go through every day. They need to be getting in there, and you need to be fighting the fire so that they can teach kids. However, at the same time, you have to carve out time to architect the programs. You have to be a building builder. You have to build programs and build the arts too. So if you're going to build things and build programs, you have to intentionally set aside time. And this is just some of the ways you can do it. Have a building plan, know what you're working towards, teach other people to fight fires, build capacity in your staff to do that for you. And then know, when is it a fire and when have I just gotten so good at fighting fires that I'm putting out every single thing I can put out? And when can I just say, you know what, I can take this hat off for a minute because I've got building plans in front of me, and if I don't do them now, where are we going to be in 5 years if I'm not sitting here doing these things right now for the district? So if you're currently a fine arts administrator and living this, just, the support is there for you. You're seen, we see you, and you can always stop yourself and get back on track to that architecting side of your job, the side that ultimately pays lots of dividends. What we want to say to you is, if you want to be a fine arts administrator, or if you're currently one and you're looking for a group, a network to be a part of, we would love to have you. We have so many resources. There's no need to, when someone walks in and tells you, hey, we need a 10-year plan for the arts and everything that needs to be replaced in a replacement cycle, and we need it in 2 weeks, you need to have people that you can call and we can say, oh yeah, we've got those. How many do you want? We'll pull them out. We've been doing them for years. And that's what TFAA is. No matter where you are, no matter what state you're in, we would love to help you out and be a part of your journey in the arts administration. We want to tell you that TFAA is beginning a cohort called New and Aspiring Administrators. So if you are brand new in the job, maybe first 1 to 3 years, or if you are wanting to be a fine arts administrator, this is for you. We're going to be launching it this summer, and it is going to be taught by seasoned, well-respected fine arts administrators who are currently doing the job and have been doing the job for some time. And we go through in detail in multiple modules all the things about this job. We have a sign-up. We've been presenting this all over this last year, and we're collecting people who are interested in it so that we can launch our application process for our first cohort that we plan on kicking off this summer. So we'd love for you to be a part of that.
How many of you would love to have had that resource as a beginning teacher or beginning administrator? Lord knows what I would have done to have a cohort to learn how to be in administration. The amount of fires we have to put out, the architecting that we have to do, the amount of conversations and relationship, you put it all together and it's overwhelming. But know that this cohort process that TFA is really proud to present is going to be that first step for our beginning and new aspiring leaders. So please take an opportunity to scan the QR code, put your name in there. We are working on some projects for the future for administrators with experience 5 and above. And so we're going to start working through this and really creating a mentor system and a network system for our administrators. Lord knows we all need the help. And again, we are open books. You can call anyone from TFA, and I feel like there's some members from TFA currently. If I could have you all stand, if you're a member of TFA right now, could you please stand? Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. But let me tell you, you call any one of these individuals at any point in time, they will give you everything they have. And so that's the type of networking we need to create. We truly appreciate you being here. And please visit our website. There's plenty of information there. Become a member. You'll have access to all of our documents. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here to serve in any capacity. We're about kids. We're here to serve kids, and we're here to serve our teachers. So God bless you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present, and have a wonderful rest of the Midwest Country.